And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I am Michael DeLon, and today I am talking with Dan, the CFO. Dan, thanks for spending some time with me this morning or today. Yeah,
Thanks for having me on, Michael. I appreciate it.
you are welcome. It's going to be a really fun conversation because Dan does something that I'm not really good at, and that's numbers and businesses and how to generate revenues and profits without increasing revenues, and just understanding the numbers and how valuable that is. And I know it's super valuable, so I can't wait to dive into the deep end with you, Dan. Tell me, as we get started,
Mhm.
how in the world did you get doing what you're doing today?
It's actually been kind of a roundabout course of my career. Graduated from college and I started working for a consulting firm, and it wasn't finance at all. It was productivity improvement, but we helped companies do whatever they did better. We
Okay.
either helped them make more with less resources, or the same resources, or make more with the same resources. We just kind of tried to optimize our operations, but it introduced me to data and the power of making
Mm,
data-driven decisions.
yeah.
I did that for a few years, got married. My wife and I decided that 100% travel wasn't really for us. And I relocated to the Atlanta area. I got my MBA in finance, and I went to work for a company in financial planning and analysis. I started as an analyst.
Okay.
And over my 15 or 20-year career in finance, I started with just doing a couple of budgets to managing a finance team where we were doing 300 budgets a year for this company. And
Wow.
we basically created this entire finance process, and large companies do this and small companies should do it as well. But what they do is we create a budget, we figure out where we want to go for the year, we create a budget, but then we just don't close the Excel spreadsheet, never look at it again, or print it up and put it in our drawer. What we do is we wait, January rolls around, we did stuff. Well, what did we say we were going to do versus what do we actually do? And then we kind of trying to find some, where are the variances? Where do we need to get back on track? Can we get back on track? What does that reforecast look like? So I did that for a number of years for a large company, and this is what large companies do.
Mhm.
About 5 years ago or so, I parted ways with the company that I worked for, and I actually went into personal financial coaching.
Wow.
It's a finance thing. It's kind of a passion project of mine. I think a lot of people in America, especially my generation, are horrible with money,
Yeah.
and they live paycheck to paycheck. And just having basic budgeting skills can help them out. And I
100%.
did that for a while. And what I came to realize is that small businesses have the same issues, financial issues in their small business than they do at home.
They do.
And I'm like, I've got a skill set for that. That's a problem I can solve. So I put my finance hat back on, and I started a fractional CFO business. Most small businesses can't hire the full-time professional financial help they need in order to better their business.
Yeah.
And that's really where I fit in, and that's really where my niche is.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny. It's not funny, but when you said small businesses struggle with the same thing, I'm like, yeah, because they're run by the individual who
Yeah.
has budgeting problems.
Yeah, and they're excellent. It doesn't matter what they do. They can be plumbers, internet marketing. It doesn't matter what they do. They're really good at what they do. But when
100%.
you become an entrepreneur, now you're not only the CEO, you're the CFO, you're the leader of the HR department, you're marketing, you're all of these different things, and not everybody has those skill sets.
That's right. Yeah, and dare I say, very few of us entrepreneurs have those skill sets because we're thought people, we're risk takers, and everything, and the money just doesn't. I mean, we think revenue and expenses and net profit, and we wonder
Mhm.
how in the world do we get there, and we really don't know what happens in between, which is a shame because there's a lot of ways to optimize. Going back to the word you used earlier, um, the real estate between top line revenues and bottom line profits, there's a lot that happens in there that a business owner can figure out how to squeeze more juice out of those dollars if they understand them. But dude, I'm telling you, to try to understand that with my background, my perspective, and my
Mhm.
brain cells, I get frustrated. I don't like it because I don't get it. Is that where business owners are?
And a lot of people, they don't get it, so they ignore it, right? It's
100%.
something I don't understand. I'm going to go sell a bunch of stuff and it'll be okay, right?
More
And
revenue solves the problem, right?
yeah, right. I'm going to sell a bunch of stuff, and then and then I'm going to spend my money to support that, and then hopefully there'll be money down at the bottom. Sometimes I'm profitable, sometimes I'm not profitable, but I don't really know, and the approach that I take is when people come talk to me, they know they've got a financial problem.
Oh yeah.
I know I can get more out of my business. I'm selling more and more every year. It's not dropping to the bottom line. I
Right.
just don't know what's going on. So we get, the way my process kind of works is we have a really, candid conversation of what is really going on today. What are you experiencing? And then we shift gears to where do you want to be? What do you want your business to look like?
Hmm.
And it's different for everybody, right? Some people I just want to grow my business and be in my business. Some people want to be able to turn it over to their family. Some people want to
Right.
be able to sell it, 5, 10 years down the road. Some people want to expand into different locations. Every story is different.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, you really have to get control of your money and understand that and create a plan. So that's what we do. We say, okay, what you want to do is probably going to take us like 5 years to do it. What does the first year look like? What do
Right.
we need to do that? What kind of revenue do we need to have? Okay, now that we have that revenue, how are we going to get that revenue? What products or services are we going to sell? What mix? You're never going to be exactly right, but the value is really sitting down and doing the planning.
Yeah.
And then what we do is we figure out, okay, this is what we were going to do. Here's what I need in terms of raw materials or expense or labor to provide the materials that are the service that I'm going to do.
Hmm.
And then here's my overhead expenses. And if
Yeah.
I do everything right, okay, what does it look like down at the bottom? If it's not good, then we have to revise it and think it and go through a couple of things.
Yeah.
So once we put together that plan, the way I stop business owners from just kind of closing it and not looking at it anymore is I create a monthly reporting package. I actually do that result of here's what we did, here's what we said we were going to do, here's where the variances are. And typically what I'll do, I'm fractional, so I'm not on site usually.
Right.
So what I'll do is I'll create this report and then I shoot a video where I walk them through my 17-page report of
Yeah.
here's what we did on profitability, here's what we did on cash flow, all of these different items that we're looking at. And then we have a meeting afterwards and we talk about the things that are going on in their business, what's the report showing them, but then we can talk about other things that are going on in the business. Now, I mentioned I worked in corporate America, and we were a large company, about a $300 million company, but
Wow.
we operated like a very small company. And being in finance and making business driven decisions, I've got a lot of experience. I've built comp plans. I've done
Hmm.
real estate projects. I've done mergers and acquisitions. I've done all of these different things that again touch on different departments or different functionalities within a business. And I just bring that data expertise to it.
Yeah. And that's really good. I mean, you've touched on so many things that we need to
Yeah,
dive
unpack it a little
in
bit.
and pull
Yeah.
back because um, short-term versus long-term thinking. All right. Business
Mhm.
owners so many times think, well, I've got an accountant, I've got a bookkeeper. Well, I
Yeah.
think I always look at bookkeepers as like short-term things, ins and outs, versus if
Yeah.
I'm trying to scale my business or sell my business or transition my business or get funding in the next year for my
Mhm.
business, I need to have solid numbers. Fair?
Yeah, very much so. And there's a difference between accounting and finance, and a lot of people don't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Accounting is the bookkeeping. It's the debits and the credits. It's the proper recording of every transaction that goes on with your business.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, a good bookkeeper, a good accountant will put that all together and then create monthly financial statements. And then that's the bigger picture of when I put everything together, what does my company look like? That's the finance side when we start digging into those
Yeah.
different details. So it does go hand in hand. And a lot of companies have bookkeepers. A lot of times it's their wife or their
Yes.
husband or their brother-in-law. And just doing the bookkeeping isn't really enough to guide the business. It's kind of really just this is what we did,
Yeah.
not really where are we going and how do we
It
get there.
it's almost like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the accounting, the bookkeeping is almost like looking in the rear view mirror,
Sure.
whereas finance is looking out the windshield.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do both. I mean, we certainly look forward,
Oh yeah.
look forward, but then we as things are going by, it's like, okay, is that what we expected it to be? And
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
not, was that our exit? If not, then
Well,
we keep going and keep going down the
very
road.
much so. And knowing the numbers is really, really important, especially if you're thinking about bringing on another person, another team member, or
Yeah.
hiring a vendor or something. How do you know if you have the money to sustain that? And are your profit margins actually increasing? How do you know all these numbers as a business owner who's out there trying to, do it.
That's a common question that I get is when do I hire the next person? And then who is that person or what role should they
Yes.
have? I have a client who he came to me and he says, Dan, I've been in business for 20 years and he is a plumber. I've been in business for 20 years. Both of my boys work in the business. I've got about 20, 25 employees, and I've never really been profitable. I want to turn the business over to my boys, but every year we grow revenue. They were doing over $4 million a year in revenue, but it just wasn't dropping to the bottom line. I'm like, well, have you ever done a budget? And they're like, no, I haven't done anything. I said, well, that's the first thing we're going to do. Let's look at your numbers from this last year and let's try to
Yeah.
figure out what next year might look like. And we found, just going through that process, we found out that they weren't scheduling their employees correctly in terms of going and doing jobs every day. I said, they're like, we cut every expense out of the business that we possibly can, but which is never the case, right?
Right.
But we cut every expense out of the business, but we're just not. I'm like, okay, well, let's just assume you've cut everything out. You need to generate like $15,000 worth of invoicing every single day. What did you invoice this week? Well, we don't
I
know.
don't know. Yeah.
You know, so Monday we did 6,500. Tuesday we did 2,200. I'm like, well, that's a lot shorter. So they were turning work away because they thought they didn't have enough
People. Yeah.
resources
Bandwidth.
to
Yeah.
do it. So we kind of got around that. And then we started looking at their cost of goods sold. The cost of goods sold had gone up 10% year over year.
Yeah.
And we just kind of went through the line item, through the line item, through the line item. First year, I started working with them mid-year. I've been working with them for 2.5 years now. First year, they had a $300,000 loss. The second year, they had a $300,000 profit. And this year, they're on pace to do about 750 to 800 in profit.
That's good.
Yeah, and it's just matching. And I was just at their Christmas party, and they're like, we have never been like this.
Yeah.
And they're just amazed. And it's just a matter of looking at the data and analyzing the data and sticking with it. But it's not everybody's skill set, and that's what I'm here to do.
That's right. Yeah. And hear what Dan didn't say is they didn't increase their spending on marketing. They didn't increase a bunch of this other stuff. They managed the numbers that they already
Mhm.
had, tweaked some things in the business, but those are the dials that we can turn as an entrepreneur when we know where the dial is and what it actually does, right?
Yeah, and so much when people start thinking about thinking about budgets, they start thinking about restriction. They're going to cut all these expenses and they're going to do all these different things. Profit is comprised of two things: revenue and expense. And if you can drive revenue up, it cures a lot of evils. But you definitely want to be intentional with the expenses that you have underneath. A lot of companies spend too much money for the amount of revenue that they have, and sometimes those decisions have to be made as well. But if you ignore the issue, it doesn't get fixed. It just gets kicked down the road.
That's right. Yeah. And if you then want to sell your business or give it away or something like that, it's really not worth what you think it is worth because you haven't managed it. And it's just
Right.
a pile of, you've got a decent asset, but it's not really worth what you think. But if you get the numbers right, it really increases the value.
Yeah. If you can show, if depending on your business, every industry is a little bit different, but generally they're all kind of the same when it comes to data. If you can show that you're growing revenue and you're growing profitability over time, you're going to sell for a lot more money than if you were stagnant every year for 5 years, or if you're shrinking a little bit and stuff like that. So that is definitely an area that we can help out as well.
Yeah.
Sure.
And the cool thing is, it sounds like the way you work is me as the entrepreneur, we're having conversations, but you're doing the grunt work and bringing back reports and saying, here's what this means, to help me as the entrepreneur really understand it. Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't, right? Nobody taught us how to read a P&L or a balance sheet or a cash flow statement. I don't know. That's why I need somebody with your experience. Is that kind of how you work with entrepreneurs?
It's exactly. I'm a financial advisor, and I don't like using that word because when I hear financial advisors, people start thinking about retirement plans, 401k, and that's not what I do at all. I really am the financial policeman of your business. And I'm trying to make sure that you're doing what you need to do in order to accomplish what you need to accomplish. So I do exactly that. I have people who get income statements, balance sheets, statements of cash flows from their accountant or their bookkeeper, and they don't have any idea how to read it. And I speak a very plain language. I don't speak a lot of jargon. It's really, what do they want out of their business and how can we do that? And here's how to keep everything on the track.
Yeah. So if an entrepreneur is listening to this, what are some of the the struggles, the angst that they're feeling as they're thinking about finance and all this, that's going to cause them to go, I might actually need to talk to this guy. What's going on inside of them?
A lot of the times it feels like their wheels are spinning. I'm
Mm,
doing all of this work. I'm working harder than I ever have. I'm generating more revenue than I ever have, and I'm just not getting anywhere.
yeah,
I'm generating more revenue, but I'm not generating any more profit. I may not even be generating profit.
right.
I mentioned the plumber earlier. I had another client who started his own internet marketing business, and his goal when we started talking, my goal 6 years ago when I started this business was to retire my wife. We've got young kids, and we'd like for her to be able to stay home and take care of the kids. But it's 6 years now, going on 7 years, and I'm barely keeping afloat. I'm like, well, have you ever done a budget? Well, no, I haven't. So we put together a budget, and in the first year, we dropped $200,000 to his bottom line, just doing what he was doing already, just being a little bit more intentional with where the money is going. And he was able to retire his wife that next year.
That's awesome.
So I think a lot of people, they just don't have really firm control over their finances. I always talk about my parents. When I was growing up, my mom and dad had a checkbook,
Yes,
and
I remember those
my
things.
dad got paid every other week. That he went to the credit union, deposited the check. Everything came out of the checkbook. You had a check register, and you knew exactly where you were at any given time. Today, it's gotten so complicated, with ACHs and bill pay and invoicing and
Yeah,
cash and credit and debit, and it's too hard to keep track of that. And
yeah,
and it's not it's the entrepreneur's responsibility to keep track of it, but they don't have to do it themselves.
that's
There's
right.
help out there to help them do that. And
Yeah.
I help them kind of get control of that situation.
Well, and the cool thing about how Dan works is he's fractional, and what that means
Mhm.
is that you get all of his brain for a fraction of the time and a fraction of the cost of hiring a chief financial officer. Because most small business owners just aren't in a position to do that. They probably don't need a full time CFO on staff yet, but they need somebody with your brain power, and they get all of your brain power at a fraction of the time and cost. Is that a fair way to explain that?
That is 100% accurate. Yep.
Okay. So Dan's the guy who comes alongside of you. He kind of sits in the C-suite with you, right, as an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
And really, the thing I love about Dan is you don't just do the work, but in the process, the entrepreneur is getting an education about finances and money, and the light bulbs start going on. It might take 3 or 4, 5 or 6 months to go, oh, I see what's happening now. And now the entrepreneur can make better decisions. Is that kind of how you see things play out?
Yeah, that is 100% how it works. I mean, they're used to running their business by gut. I maybe I
Yes.
used to work for somebody. I think I can do it better. They start their own business and they do it, and they're operating and they're doing things, and they don't take the time to slow down and look at the data. They haven't been exposed to that thought process, right? They might know, if I do a job, I know it's probably gonna take me this long to do, and it's probably gonna cost me to do that, so I should invoice that. But they don't look at the overall bigger picture of all of those other overhead
Right.
expenses and stuff like that. So what I do is I help them make sure that their books are in order. Help them make sure their bookkeeper is getting everything. I take that output, we create that plan, but then what I'm doing is I'm advising them every month, and
Yeah.
I'm teaching here are the data points that you need to be looking at, and how you should be looking at things. Specifically, just very high level. I'm always looking at how my revenue is growing versus how my expenses are growing.
Yeah.
If my revenue is growing, 20% year over year, and my expenses are up 2% year over year, that's a pretty good story.
Yeah.
If my revenue is up 20% year over year, but my expenses are up 100% year over year, that's not as good of a story. But
Right.
then we'll drill down and figure out where those expenses are growing and why is that the case.
Yeah.
And then it's solving problems for the
Yeah.
business, and it implements a continuous improvement methodology by every month looking and say, this is what's not working this month. How do we fix that? This is
Yeah.
what's not working this month. How do we fix that?
Yeah. And it's really important for business owners to understand that we are a unique animal. And we need to bring people around us who do different things. So we need marketing coaches and vendors. We need financial coaches and vendors, right?
Mhm.
We need operational coaches and vendors because we're not good at all of those things. We just can't be. The plumber's great at plumbing, but I bet if his van breaks down, he better not be out in the backyard trying to fix it.
Right.
He has a mechanic that he takes it to, right? And if you need to buy new vans or something, you might want to talk to Dan first to say, what's the best way to do this? Do I buy it now? Do I amortize? What? Because that's where Dan just shines, right? And it's understanding that to be a great business owner, you need to build a team around you. And a lot in today's culture, a lot of that team are fractional
Yep.
CFOs and CMOs and CTOs, which is brilliant because I get all of your brain for a fraction of the cost, and you can help me grow my business consistently over time. And really what I love is driving more dollars to the bottom line.
Yep.
And that's where we make a really big impact on our family, our communities, our team members, and doing, actually living the lifestyle that we got into business for, more free time. But it takes that profit and it relieves a lot of the stress.
And I was just going to say that the financial stress alone, the amount of financial stress that comes off your shoulders is worth it.
Oh, without question, dude. Yes. You get that off your shoulders and realize
Yeah.
things are good. Woohoo. It's
You
not
get
like
back to
you're
running
living
you can get back to running your business rather than worrying about that all the time.
and having a life. You can actually take a couple weeks off here and there and realize the business is going to be okay because you've got money in the bank and you've got some reserves and everything's, wow, this is all right. Because you've got a handle on finances, but again, you don't have to do it yourself. You hire Dan and you say, all right, how do we do this? So if somebody's out there, Dan, and they're spinning their wheels, they're struggling, they're like, yeah, you are speaking my language and singing my
Mhm.
song, dude. What's the next step? How do they connect with Dan, the CFO, to just have a conversation?
Yeah. So all you need to do is go to my website, danthecfo.com. I keep it real simple. And then there's like several schedule a free strategy session buttons on my website. And you can click on that, schedule a time with me. I don't charge anything for those strategy sessions. It's really just a conversation.
Mhm.
I want to know what your pain points are and we can discuss how I might help. If it's a fit, it's a fit. If it's not a fit, that's fine too. Maybe you'll learn a little bit, but I'll get into a little bit greater detail on specifically how I can help your company if you think this might be something that you're interested in.
That's awesome. Well, let me just encourage you to reach out to him because we all need it. If you don't have a great CFO on your team, whether it's fractional, full time, if you don't have that as an entrepreneur, you're really leaving money on the table. There are pennies and dollars flying past you that you know nothing about, and it will pay you multiples to have somebody like Dan working with you. So let me just reach out to him, danthecfo.com. I'm going to grab that, put that in the show notes as well. And just reach out, have the conversation and see how he might be able to give you some information, maybe work with you and see if he can help you be one of those great stories of swinging more profit to the bottom line by getting a handle on your numbers. So Dan, man, thanks for first of all, what you do, because it's
Yeah.
really, really important.
I
And
love doing it. It's
well,
awesome. I really enjoy doing it.
I
Thanks for
praise
having me
God for
on.
people. I praise God for people like you, man. 'Cause it'd be like poking myself in the eye if I had to do it. I've got people on my team who do it with and for me. But it's really, really important, and entrepreneurs and business owners need somebody like you. So thanks for doing it. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being my guest.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it.